Chemistry is a really interesting comic to me, but sadly not for particularly good reasons. I think this is the first time I've seen a story structure which was so tangled that I got more confused the more I looked into it. The porn was actually pretty good, but the story felt sorta like a puzzle where half the pieces was missing and the rest of the pieces didn't fit together. I hope this doesn't come out too harsh, but let me take you through this thing. Oh yeah, and obviously spoiler warning for chapter 1 of this comic. So first of all, a rough summary of what's going on. Girl meets boy in school, they start to hang out, they hang out for about a month and then they become an item. Girl tells boy she feels insecure about her boob size, boy makes some sort of boob growth formula based on something he found on the deep web, drug time, boobs grow, mission accomplished. But then, plot twist, girl starts to turn into a cow. She frantically calls boy over, boy offers to try and change her back, then she gets so offended by that she breaks up with him on the spot. Sex, 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 and then we end with boy receiving a letter telling him that apparently she wanted to bimbify herself. Also, she got pregnant. Somewhere in the equation, we don't know with who, we don't know when, and we don't know if she's still pregnant. All that we do know is that this pregnancy is supposedly what triggered her wish to be bimbified to, quote, justify my choice. I don't know with you, but to me that raised more questions than answers. So, and now for the detailed version. We start with girl getting paired with boy for a school project, and then she decides to sit with him during lunch. This opening bit of the story is kinda odd to me, because I feel like the image we got of main girl here was kinda misleading, at least relative to what happens later in the story. At this point, girl seems largely disinterested in the main populace of the school. She mentions most of her friends are online friends, and she actively seeks out this other outcast boy, and she seems more interested in him when he mentions he's also a bit of an internet boy. We also learn that main girl is a gamer and supposedly max rank in some shit. During this part of the comic, she also makes no attempt to fit in with the other kids, so the image I at least get of her is that she's disinterested with the cool kids, and she'd rather just play video games than hang out with other interweb boys and gamer girls, cause that's who she feels at home around. I'm mentioning this because later in the story, this is not the case. There's a part of the story where there's some sort of party at the school. She asks boy if he wants to go. He invites her to play video games instead, and then she acts offended. Then she walks away while saying, "I'll see you there," and that is without asking him first. So she just kinda takes advantage of him being shy in order to push him into going instead of just talking about it. This is completely out of character relative to what we've seen so far. First of all, she's been really nice to this dude and haven't taken advantage of him like this before. Second of all, why did she suddenly care for the dance? She haven't given any indication that she cares for stuff like this before. But if these two had a civilized conversation about this, which they didn't, you could at least have shoehorned some explanation of this in there. Third, why is this party scene here? It ties in with nothing for the whole rest of the chapter. It comes in a flashback in the middle of her cow transformation thing, and when the girl gets to the party thing, she doesn't want to go anyway. Then she makes out with this guy in a car and just leaves, and it's not brought up again for the whole chapter? By the way, this is presumably while her and main guy are together, but it's not easy to tell because we aren't informed when this flashback is supposed to take place. In fact, it happens right after this page with no explanation, and a lot of folks couldn't even tell whether this was a flashback or if she just got turned back from being a cow and you just didn't announce it. I don't know if this is supposed to be after she discovered she was pregnant, like maybe she would want to go to the dance because she wanted to get more in touch with the school because that means more opportunity to fuck. But then, why even drag this guy along? If she wants to fuck around, wouldn't he just get in the way? I mean, that would explain why she then ditches him and tries to hook up with this dude, but then if she wants to fuck around, why does she leave before they fuck? And this still doesn't explain why she acted like a bitch to this kid. Then there's the tits growth thing. We know girl both got pregnant and discovered she was pregnant while she had small tits. Then after her tits grow bigger, we get a backstory that apparently she wanted her tits to get big because she was bullied by some cheerleaders who made two ambiguous comments calling her small, which could be interpreted as being about her tits or her height. and then she wanted to fit in more. But this then contradicts with the pregnancy thingy at the end, where she says she wanted to just get bimbofied. Later in the story, she says she actually liked getting turned into a bimbo cow, even though everyone thought she looked like a freak. And if she wanted recognition from the other kids, why does she look so uncomfortable when she actually got attention right after her boobs grew? Maybe my IQ is actually just 0, but I can't get the math to add up here. Was the tits growth thingy about bimbification or about fitting in more? Based on the comic, I'm putting my money on it being about bimbification, because she turns into a cow, which has super exaggerated sexual features for some reason, and then she wants that, and like, if she wanted to fit in more, then this seems... then this doesn't seem to work out. But then that raises the question, why did you give us a misleading backstory explanation which had nothing to do with what was actually going on? After her tits grow bigger, the cheerleader flashback happens, and we is specifically told, oh, you was probably wondering why I wanted big tits. And then it's made out to be all about her wanting to fit in, and then we go back to this, and she's turning into a cow, and then she likes being turned into a cow despite everyone thinks she looks super weird. And then I'm sitting here flipping back and forth in the comic trying to figure out if I missed something, because this doesn't make sense. And then this just sort of goes on until the end when the pregnancy thing comes up, and then that again contradicts half the story. Why did we get a misleading cheerleader backstory if this was all about pregnancy and bimbification and not about fitting in? And like, the story so far has been written from an outside perspective. Like, we as a fly on the wall, listening to conversations and stuff, but every now and then we actually get to hear the main girl narrating her thoughts and explaining what she's thinking. But what seriously fucks with me is that we only get to hear her thoughts when they're wrong? Like, the cheerleader story with the bullying thing. The story goes out of its way to have main girl explain this stuff. And then right after, we have a set of events that contradicts everything we've just been told. And then we get a new explanation which contradicts the first explanation. So why did we get explanation 1 in the first place? And this is not to mention that both narratives seem to contradict the opening bit, which made main girl out to be disinterested in school stuffs at all. I get that some stories are complex, and I get mystery stories and stuff, but I feel like there's a pretty distinct line between something like Paraphor and between something like this, which feels like significant parts of the story was just retconned like 1 or 2 times at least during just this one chapter. This story feels like a mindfuck, and not so much due to planning, but more so due to lack thereof. And believe me, I wanna like Yiff, I want to celebrate all the cool stuff in this community, but the structure in this comic has just been gnawing at me, and I know I'm not the only one. So I figured we could at least talk a bit about this, and maybe all of us could get a little smarter. Personally, I think the comic would have been better off if, first of all, the main girl's motivation was consistent. And if there was a clear plan with her motivation changing, but the presentation just made it seem tangled, then I would have put a bit more planning into making sure that we see a clear development instead of her motivation changing at the drop of a hat without any build-up or explanation as to how or why. Occasionally we get to hear the main girl's thoughts, but only sometimes. I think whatever is going on would be a lot more clear if she became the big narrator, and if we saw the entire story from her point of view. The whole bimbification thing is a pretty character-centric kink, so getting her thoughts, her emotions on all of this, and seeing it in real time as she went through all of it, I think that would both help amplify what the comic is going for, as well as make whatever storyline you had in mind far more coherent. And that's what I had. As always, yell at me in the comments if I missed anything, or if you have something you want to add. I'm dumb too, I fuck things up too, so please tell me if I really step in the spinach. Love y'alls, eat your vegetables.